Life often feels like a story we can't control. We plan, we dream, we fight for our goals, but sometimes things don't turn out the way we imagined. And yet, the beautiful truth is, God is the ultimate author. When life seems messy, when our plans fail, when our past mistakes weigh us down, God has the power to rewrite our story. And He doesn't just edit the pages, He transforms them. But there's a condition. We must receive His rewriting with faith. First, God rewrites our thoughts. The mind is the battlefield of life. Our old thinking, our fears, regrets, and doubts often holds us captive. But God wants to renew our minds, replacing worry with peace, doubt with trust, and negativity with hope. When we surrender our thought patterns to Him, we begin to see the world through His perspective. Second, God rewrites our circumstances. What looks like a dead end to us is never the end for God. He can take the broken situations, the delays, the losses, and turn them into blessings. When we stop trying to force our way and start trusting His timing, we position ourselves to receive His miraculous interventions. Third, God rewrites our identity. Sometimes we define ourselves by failures, weaknesses, or what others say about us, but God sees us as new creations, redeemed, valuable, and equipped for His purpose. Accepting this rewritten identity changes how we live, how we serve, and how we pursue our destiny. Fourth, God rewrites our relationships. The pain of broken friendships, family struggles, or betrayal can leave scars. Yet when we allow God to rewrite the story, He restores what is lost, brings reconciliation, and strengthens connections according to His plan. He turns what was meant for harm into opportunities for growth and blessing. Finally, God rewrites our future. Our past does not define us, and our present does not limit us. God's pen is still in motion, shaping a future full of hope, purpose, and promise. But we must step forward with faith, confident that every rewritten chapter leads us closer to His plan for our life. The key is simple. God rewrites, we receive. Stop resisting. Stop trying to control every outcome. Open your heart, trust His process, and embrace the story He is creating. Your life is not stuck. It is being transformed. Your past is not a sentence. It is a setup for God's glory. And your future is not uncertain. It is a masterpiece being written by the author of all things. Our thoughts shape everything we do. They are the foundation of our actions, the lens through which we see life, and the voice that whispers either doubt or courage into our hearts. Many of us struggle with thoughts that seem uncontrollable. Fear creeps in, self-doubt takes root, and past failures replay endlessly in our minds. These thoughts can become chains, holding us back from the purpose God has for our lives. But God has not left us in the prison of our own thinking. He has the power to rewrite our thoughts, to replace the patterns of fear and negativity with faith, hope, and clarity. The process begins with recognition. We must first acknowledge that not every thought we have is from God. Some are influenced by past hurts, societal pressures, or the enemy's attempts to steal our joy. The first step toward transformation is identifying which thoughts are rooted in truth and which are rooted in lies. God's word becomes the standard, the measuring stick that tells us which thoughts are aligned with His promises and which are counterfeit. By holding our minds to the truth of Scripture, we begin to see the patterns that need to change. Prayer plays a vital role in this process. When we talk to God about our fears, anxieties, and doubts, we are inviting Him into the very room where our thoughts reside. It is in these moments of honest communication that God begins His rewriting work. He does not simply erase our doubts. He replaces them with understanding, peace, and confidence in His plan. As we submit our minds to Him, our perspective begins to shift. What once seemed overwhelming starts to make sense through the lens of His wisdom. Renewing our mind also requires action on our part. God can provide the insight, the clarity, and the guidance, but we must choose to engage in practices that reinforce His truth. Reading Scripture, meditating on His promises, and speaking life-giving words over ourselves are all ways we participate in this transformation. Every time we choose to reject a negative thought and replace it with God's truth, we are strengthening our mental and spiritual muscles. This is not an instant process, but a consistent daily effort to align our minds with the Creator's vision. The enemy often tries to convince us that our past failures define who we are. He whispers that we are not capable, not worthy, and not enough. But God's rewriting work does not look at our failures as the final story. He sees potential, resilience, and growth. He takes the mistakes we regret and the regrets we carry and transforms them into lessons, wisdom, and stepping stones. Thoughts that once held us captive now become reminders of God's faithfulness and His ability to turn weakness into strength. Our thoughts influence our emotions, decisions, and actions. A mind dominated by fear will make choices that limit opportunity and joy, but a mind renewed by God brings confidence and clarity. We begin to see challenges as opportunities, obstacles as training grounds, and setbacks as setups for growth. The mental renewal God provides allows us to respond to life not reactively, but intentionally. We are no longer slaves to impulsive or destructive thinking. We are empowered to make decisions that align with His purpose. It is important to understand that God's rewriting of our thoughts is not about creating a false sense of positivity or ignoring reality. It is about transforming our perspective so that we can see situations the way He sees them. Where we once saw impossibility, God reveals potential. Where we once felt fear, He imparts courage. Where we once felt doubt, He plants unwavering faith. This transformation is gradual but powerful, reshaping the internal dialogue that guides our lives. As God rewrites our thoughts, we also experience freedom. The weight of guilt, shame, and worry begins to lift. We are able to rest in the assurance that our minds are no longer controlled by what was or what might be, but by the truth of who God is and what He promises. Our thought aligned with God's truth builds a foundation for the life He intends for us. Our mental landscape is renewed, and with it, our ability to live with purpose, clarity, and peace. This process is ongoing. Life will still present challenges that test our mental resilience, but as our thoughts are continually rewritten by God, we develop a mindset that embraces His guidance, trusts His timing, and walks boldly in His plan. Our minds become a garden where faith flourishes, hope grows, and doubt fades. God rewrites our thoughts not just to make us think differently, but to help us live differently, confident, courageous, and fully aware of His transformative power in every aspect of life. Life often brings situations that seem impossible to overcome. We encounter delays, setbacks, heartbreaks, and unexpected challenges that make us question whether things will ever improve. It's easy to feel stuck, to believe that circumstances define our destiny, or to think that the world is against us. But God has a way of rewriting what seems unchangeable. When we surrender our circumstances to Him, what looks like failure can become a foundation for blessing, and what appears as delay can be a setup for His perfect timing. The truth is, God is not limited by our struggles, our mistakes, or even our impatience. He can transform the very situations that seem hopeless into testimonies of His power and faithfulness. The first step in allowing God to rewrite circumstances is surrender. We must release our desire to control every outcome and acknowledge that His perspective is higher than ours. While we see only the immediate pain or the closed door, God sees the bigger picture, including what can come from every challenge. Surrendering does not mean passivity, it means active trust. It is a conscious choice to stop resisting the process and to allow him to guide us through it. This trust opens the door for him to intervene in ways we could never orchestrate ourselves. God's rewriting often works through timing. What we interpret as a delay may actually be preparation. Seasons of waiting, though uncomfortable, can strengthen our character, sharpen our discernment, and align us with his plan. He uses delays to shape our hearts, teach us patience, and position us for success that aligns with his purposes. If we could force the timing ourselves, we might miss the fullness of what he intends to give. When we embrace his timing, we step into a rhythm that transforms our setbacks into stepping stones. Another aspect of God rewriting circumstances is perspective. A situation may look negative at first glance, but with God's insight, it can carry hidden blessings. A job loss may redirect us toward a calling we never considered. A failed relationship may prepare us for a connection that strengthens and uplifts. God can take what was intended for harm and use it for our ultimate good. He does not waste pain or disappointment. He redeems it, turning it into purpose. By seeking his guidance in every challenge, we learn to see beyond the immediate difficulty and trust that he is shaping outcomes in our favor. Faith is critical in this process. To receive God's rewriting of circumstances, we must believe that he is able and willing to intervene. Doubt can blind us to the opportunities he creates. When we act in faith, we align ourselves with the solutions God is orchestrating behind the scenes. Faith does not guarantee that life will always be easy, but it assures us that no obstacle is outside of his control. It allows us to remain confident and hopeful, even when the natural evidence suggests otherwise. God also rewrites circumstances through action. While he can move mountains, he often works through us. Obedience, perseverance, wise decision-making are part of the process. We are not called to sit idly by, we are called to partner with him. As we take steps guided by prayer and discernment, we position ourselves to receive his intervention. Each small, faithful action invites him to amplify our efforts, turning limited resources into abundance and weakness into strength. Another profound aspect is transformation through trials. Difficult circumstances are not meaningless, they are catalysts for growth. As God rewrites the context of our lives, we gain resilience, wisdom, and a deeper reliance on him. What once felt like a dead end becomes a doorway to spiritual maturity and personal growth. Our character is shaped by how we respond to these rewritten circumstances, proving that God's work is not just in changing what happens to us, but in transforming who we become through it. Ultimately, God's rewriting of circumstances demonstrates his power and faithfulness. We may not understand the method or timing, but his promise remains true. He works all things together for our good. When we stop resisting, trust his timing, seek his perspective, act in faith, and remain open to growth, we begin to see circumstances shift. What seemed impossible becomes possible, despair turns into hope, and obstacles are transformed into opportunities. Life is not a series of random events, but a narrative under the sovereign control of God, who can rewrite any situation to fulfill his purposes. Too often, we define ourselves by what we have done, what others have said about us, or by the mistakes and failures we carry from the past. We look in the mirror and see a version of ourselves that is incomplete, broken, or unworthy. We compare ourselves to others and feel small, inadequate, or incapable of fulfilling the dreams that stir in our hearts. But God sees us differently. He does not measure us by the standards of the world or by the errors we have made. He sees potential, purpose, and value that far surpasses anything we could imagine. When God rewrites our identity, he removes the false labels that have been imposed on us and replaces them with his truth, transforming how we see ourselves and how we live. The first step in this transformation is recognizing that our identity is not built on our achievements or failures. We are not defined by our income, our status, our past decisions, or even the opinions of those around us. True identity comes from God, who created us in his image, breathed life into us, and called us by name. To accept God's rewriting of our identity, we must reject the lies that tell us we are too flawed, too late, or too unworthy. We must remind ourselves that in God's eyes, our worth is inherent, unshakable, and eternal. God rewrites identity through redemption. Our past does not determine our future. It provides the context for his transformative work. Mistakes, failures, and regrets are not final verdicts, but opportunities for God to display his grace. What was intended for RM can be used for growth. He takes the broken pieces of our lives and weaves them into a story of resilience, strength, and purpose. When we allow God to redefine who we are, we begin to see ourselves through his lens, not through the distorted lens of shame or self-condemnation. Renewal of identity also requires surrendering the need for external validation. The world constantly pressures us to perform, to earn approval, and to prove our worth, but God's rewriting reminds us that our value is not earned, it is given. When we stop seeking acceptance from people and start embracing the truth of God's perspective, we experience freedom. The opinions of others lose their power to define us, and we begin to live from a place of confidence and security in who God says we are. This shift is transformative because it changes the way we interact with life, with others, and with ourselves. Another aspect of identity rewriting is embracing purpose. God does not just redefine who we are internally, he also clarifies why we exist. Our gifts, talents, passions, and experiences are part of his blueprint for our lives. When we accept our rewritten identity, we see our role in his larger story. We understand that we are equipped for every challenge, prepared for every opportunity, and called to make an impact that aligns with his kingdom purposes. This awareness transforms the way we approach work, relationships, and personal goals. Every action becomes infused with intentionality because it flows from a deep understanding of who we are in God. Faith plays a critical role in this process. It requires believing that God's vision for our identity is greater than what we have known or experienced. Often we resist this rewriting because we cling to familiar limitations, thinking we know ourselves best. But God invites us to trust him, to allow him to reshape our self-perception, and to embrace the potential he has placed within us. Faith allows us to act in alignment with our new identity even before we fully see it manifested in our circumstances. God's rewriting of identity also impacts the way we relate to others. When we know who we are in him, we stop trying to prove ourselves through competition, people-pleasing, or comparison. Instead, we interact with authenticity, generosity, and confidence. We are no longer threatened by the success of others because we understand our own unique calling. We can encourage, uplift, and serve without fear of losing status or significance because our worth is anchored in God, not in the fleeting opinions of the world. Ultimately, the rewriting of identity is a process of transformation that touches every aspect of life. It shapes our thoughts, guides our decisions, influences our relationships, and empowers us to step into the destiny God has prepared. As we internalize God's truth about who we are, we begin to walk with boldness, live with purpose, and embrace every opportunity with confidence. The old labels fade, the lies lose their grip, and the person God has always intended us to be emerges with clarity, strength, and unstoppable potential. Relationships are some of the most beautiful and challenging aspects of life. They can bring joy, support, and love, but they can also carry pain, disappointment, and brokenness. Many of us carry scars from friendships that ended, family bonds that were strained or betrayals that left deep wounds. These experiences can make us cautious, closed off, or even resentful. Yet God specializes in rewriting relationships. He has the power to restore what was lost, heal what was broken, and strengthen connections in ways we could never orchestrate on our own. When we allow him to work in this area, relationships cease to be sources of fear and frustration and become channels of blessing, growth, and purpose. The first step in experiencing God's rewriting of relationships is surrender. We must release our desire to control people, outcomes, and situations. We cannot force reconciliation or manufacture love where it does not exist. What we can do is invite God into the process, trusting that he knows what is best for each connection in our lives. By surrendering our expectations, we allow him to work behind the scenes, orchestrating circumstances and conversations that align with his plan for restoration and growth. This trust does not mean we ignore problems. It means we approach them with humility, patience, and faith in God's timing. Forgiveness is a critical element in this transformation. Many relationships are fractured because of offenses, misunderstandings, or betrayals. Holding on to anger, resentment, or bitterness only perpetuates the damage. God's rewriting often begins with a heart willing to forgive. Forgiveness does not mean excusing wrongs or pretending pain does not exist. It means releasing the control that resentment has over our lives. When we forgive, we open the door for God to heal wounds, restore trust, and rewrite the story of the relationship with his wisdom guiding the way. God also rewrites relationships by providing clarity and discernment. Not every connection is meant to continue in the same way or with the same intensity. Some relationships need to be redirected for our own protection, growth, or spiritual alignment. God gives insight into which relationships to nurture, which to redefine, and which to release. This discernment is essential because his plan for our lives often involves surrounding us with people who strengthen our faith, encourage our purpose, and challenge us to grow in the right ways. Through his guidance, relationships become purposeful, intentional, and aligned with his will. Communication, renewed by God's influence, plays a powerful role in the rewriting process. Honest, loving, and patient communication can bridge gaps that seemed insurmountable. God empowers us to speak with grace, listen with understanding, and respond with wisdom rather than impulsive emotion. When we allow him to guide our words, we prevent misunderstandings from escalating and foster a climate where healing and reconciliation can take root. Conversations that once felt impossible become moments of connection and breakthrough because we are relying on God's perspective rather than our own limited understanding. Another aspect of God rewriting relationships is his ability to turn what was meant for harm into blessing. Brokenness, conflict, and disappointment can teach lessons, build character, and reveal the depth of God's faithfulness. Sometimes a difficult relationship is the very instrument God uses to strengthen our empathy, patience, and resilience. Other times, he redirects connections so that new, healthy, and life-giving relationships emerge. In every scenario, God's purpose is to shape interactions in a way that glorifies him and enriches our lives. Faith and patience are essential during this process. God's timing is perfect, even when it seems slow or confusing. Relationships may not be restored immediately, and some may never return to what they once were. Yet by trusting him, we learn to navigate connections with grace and acceptance. Every effort, every step toward reconciliation, and every prayer for guidance becomes part of God's larger plan to rewrite the relational story in our lives. As God rewrites relationships, we begin to see transformations not only in others, but also within ourselves. We become more compassionate, understanding, and forgiving. Our capacity to love grows, and our ability to maintain healthy boundaries strengthens. We learn that relationships are not solely about what we can gain, but about how we can reflect God's love, grace, and wisdom in every interaction. The broken can be healed, the strained can be strengthened, and the overlooked can become cherished. God's hand can turn conflict into collaboration, sorrow into joy, and separation into unity. Ultimately, God's rewriting of relationships is a testament to his power and his desire to bring wholeness into every area of our lives. As we yield to him, forgive where necessary, seek discernment, communicate with love, and trust his timing, relationships that once brought pain can become sources of blessing, encouragement, and purpose. What seemed irreparable is restored. What was weak is strengthened. And what was broken becomes a reflection of God's transforming love. The future is a mystery that often stirs both excitement and anxiety within us. We plan, we dream, we set goals, and yet life unfolds in ways we cannot always predict. Uncertainty can bring fear, doubt, and hesitation. We worry about what lies ahead, and sometimes we try to control outcomes beyond our ability. But the truth is that our future is not fixed in our hands. It is held securely in the hands of God. When we surrender our plans, our fears, and our expectations to him, we allow God to rewrite our future. He can transform uncertainty into opportunity, delays into preparation, and setbacks into stepping stones toward his ultimate plan for our lives. One of the first ways God rewrites our future is by giving us vision. When we are uncertain about what lies ahead, fear often clouds our judgment, but God illuminates the path, giving glimpses of hope and direction. He opens our eyes to possibilities we cannot yet see and aligns circumstances in a way that guides us toward his purposes. Vision is more than seeing a goal. It is understanding that each season, each challenge, and each experience has meaning in the larger story he is writing. By trusting him, we begin to see our lives not as a series of random events, but as a narrative guided by divine wisdom and intent. Faith is essential in embracing this rewritten future. We cannot fully grasp the way God will unfold what is to come, but we can trust in his ability to orchestrate every detail for our good. Fear of the unknown can paralyze us, but faith frees us to move forward, knowing that God's plan is both perfect and personal. Faith allows us to act boldly even when we do not see the entire road ahead. It transforms uncertainty into confidence, hesitation into action, and doubt into hope. By anchoring ourselves in his promises, we step into the future with courage rather than fear. God rewrites the future not only by shaping events, but also by shaping us. Our character, wisdom, and resilience are strengthened through the challenges we face. The obstacles, disappointments, and trials we encounter are not meaningless. They prepare us for the responsibilities and blessings to come. When we allow God to mold our hearts and minds, we enter new seasons equipped with the skills, discernment, and spiritual depth necessary to thrive. The future is not just about external circumstances. It is about who we become along the way. Another vital aspect of God rewriting the future is transformation of what we consider limitations. We often look at our current resources, abilities, or circumstances and conclude that the future is impossible. God, however, sees potential beyond our comprehension. He can take what seems insufficient and multiply it, turn weakness into strength, and convert scarcity into abundance. When we align our actions with his guidance, we position ourselves to receive supernatural provision, unexpected opportunities, and doors that no one else can open. What appears as limitat, ion to us, becomes a canvas for God's creativity and power. Patience and timing are also crucial in God's rewriting of the future. We live in a culture of instant results and immediate gratification, yet God's timing is perfect. What we perceive as delays are often seasons of preparation. He ensures that each step we take is purposeful. Each season serves a greater goal, and each moment aligns with his ultimate plan. Learning to trust his timing cultivates perseverance, strengthens our faith, and teaches us to wait confidently for the fulfillment of his promises. God's rewriting of the future also provides hope in times of despair. When life seems unpredictable, when plans fall apart, or when fear of the unknown overwhelms us, God reminds us that the final outcome is secure in His hands. Our past mistakes do not dictate what lies ahead. Our current struggles are not the end of the story. God's pen is still in motion, shaping a future that is full of promise, purpose, and fulfillment. He can turn setbacks into springboards, failures into lessons, and even loss into gain. The rewritten future is not simply a better version of our lives. It is a life fully aligned with God's purpose. It is a future in which we walk confidently, equipped to face challenges, strengthened to seize opportunities, and empowered to fulfill the calling He has placed upon us. Every step forward becomes purposeful, every decision intentional, and every challenge a testimony of His faithfulness. By surrendering control, embracing faith, and trusting His guidance, we allow God to shape a future that surpasses our dreams, fulfills His promises, and brings glory to His name.